When I was growing up, there was a diversity of media that doesn't exist anymore. An example, living in Westchester County, New York, in the suburbs of New York City, I used to get the newspapers from my dad when I was a kid, talking like in the early 1960s. And I'd have to go to the store a couple times a day, 3 times if, in the summer or when I wasn't in school. There was a morning newspaper, there was an afternoon newspaper, and there was an evening newspaper. And not just one of each, actually, there were several of each. The Daily News, which still exists, the Daily Mirror, which no longer exists, the New York Post, which exists in sort of a caricature form, the New York Times, likewise, which exists, and some people wonder why at this point, and likewise the Wall Street Journal. There was the Journal American, which is gone. There was the Herald Tribune, which is gone. There was the New York World Telegram Sun, which is gone, and a couple of others. And there were mergers. I remember the World Journal Tribune, that they merged a bunch of papers, and immediately everybody went on strike. And after they finally published some of it, they ran for a few months and it folded. You couldn't own a TV station and a radio station and a newspaper or some combination in the same market. The FCC wouldn't give you a license for that. The official policy, in fact, the law and the regulations were against allowing concentration of ownership of the media. And so you had a diversity of opinion, even if it had a shared class perspective, that people disagreed on, from one media outlet to another on many, many things. And there was also, for broadcast media, particularly television, something known as the Fairness Doctrine, where whatever that diversity of opinion among the owners and managers of the media would end up producing, they were obligated to put on something that represented a dissenting opinion. All of these things are gone. And by the way, I didn't mention the record companies, those that published audio recordings, and the motion picture industry. And again, there was a diversity of ownership across the board. And so you would see all different kinds of opinions depending on which media you were in. And there was room for a lot of opinion that I would say about the only thing you didn't see or hear in the media was a call for a workers' revolution. There was this shared class perspective, after all, and of course, lesser examples of that class bias, certainly. Now, you have like 6 guys own everything, and in addition to that, whereas before, where I would say spend 2 hours a day watching television, or 1 hour a day, or 3 hours a day. Maybe the time in my car or at the beach or whatever, listening to the radio, read the newspapers, but there was a diversity of them, and then read whatever else you read over the course of a day. All of that maybe would take up about half or less of my conscious information acquiring, the rest by human contact, social contact, talking, thinking, doing, being, existing in the world, firsthand data acquisition. And now the percentage of information that we acquire through media is much larger than it was 20 years ago, 40, I'm talking about 60 years ago now. And there was already television, and, everyone pretty much had a television already, and radio and newspapers. So the point being that the 6 guys, or whoever it is, that own all of this media now, own most of the space between your ears. They have a tremendous influence over our very consciousness, just by virtue of the percentage of the information that they've delivered to us as opposed to that which we have mined on our own. It's a huge amount of power. And so when you're looking at something like it's just happened with Tucker Carlson, you look at phenomenon like nobody discussing the run-up to the Iraq War, what they did with Phil Donahue, for example, over that, and what we got as a result, the product that we got as a result. Wall-to-wall generals telling us, why we had to go to war, and then finding out, but it's not really on television all that much or anywhere else, what actually happened. The context now, of course, is we're at war with Russia. Tucker Carlson is one of the few people that was allowing people to talk about it, on cable TV. He's gone for doing it. You can bet that that's what that's about. For featuring, RFK Jr., talking about that and things like what happened with the COVID rollout and all of that. And other people talking about other things that are just not part of the official narrative. You have the few remaining cracks of daylight, flawed as they are or were, have been mortared over. And it's a pretty scary moment because it's purposeful. And if one were to make a deduction about the purpose, you would have to say that they intend to do some pretty brutal things. And while we're at war with Russia and while they're tamping down on us, it's not hard to guess what some of those things might be.